Okay, here we begin. Uh, today's daf, Bez Hashem, is Menachos Daf Samachay, and we are learning Lili Nishma, Steve's mother, Esther, Bas Avram, Teinafshe, Tzura Baruch Tzura Chaim, and here we go. We are now in the middle of a conversation. So we're up to Menachos Daf Samachay, 65. And we're in the middle of a story over here. We were talking about the Minchas HaOmer. Now, the Minchas HaOmer was a flour offering that they made out of specialized barley flour. They would harvest barley flour on the second day of Pesach, and then bring it as a flour offering. They would make a kamitza, and then they would bake the rest, and the rest was eaten by the kahanim. The point was that was mater the chodesh. Says the Mishnah, if you remember, the Mishnah said yesterday that preferably they tried to bring the omer from somewhere near Jerusalem. They tried to bring the barley from somewhere that was near Jerusalem, but sometimes they couldn't even find barley near Jerusalem. They couldn't even find wheat near Jerusalem. And therefore, they brought it from a place called Ganais Trifim and from a place called Bikas Ein Soicher. So we're in the middle of the story. Why couldn't they find barley near Jerusalem? So the answer is because there was a siege. There was a civil war between the Hyrcanus and Aristobulus. These are the two Hashmonaim children, and Jews versus Jews. And Hyrcanus was on the outside, and Aristobulus was on the inside. And Hyrcanus group burned all the food. They burned all the food. And not only that, but if we remember yesterday where we ended off, that there was this person who was advising Hyrcanus, who was very familiar in Greek mythology. And he advised that the Jews on the inside, what makes them invincible is because they are continuing to bring the sheep as a carbon tamid. So the next time when they lower money to buy a sheep from us, we should send up a chazir. And that was the Gemara's saying, and the Gemara's cursed anybody who learns Greek mythology, etc. So here we are about 12 lines from the bottom of Samach Dalet Amud Beis. So now remember, the whole place is a civil war and there's destruction going on. Kimata Omer, when it came time to bring the Omer, they didn't know where they're going to bring the Omer from, because there was no barley fields. Achrize, they made an announcement, we're looking for barley. Asahu Chersha, there came this mute person. Oisev Chada Yoda, and a mute person can't talk. So how did he communicate? So Oisev Chada Yoda Igre, he put one hand on a roof, Chada Yoda Atzrifa, and one hand on the sharp point of an arava tree, something sharp. A tzrifa tree is like a type of arava tree. And Igra, he put his hand on the roof. So I don't know. So Amalahu Mard. Now, if you ever wondered whatever happened to Mordechai from the Megillas Esther, where did he retire? So according to the way Rashi learns, he lived a very, very long time, and he retired in working for the Beis Hamikdash. In fact, so Amalahu Mordechai figured out what this mute was trying to say. He's trying to say that there's a place called Igra Tzrifa, roof Tzrifa. That's where you can find the barley wheat. Amalu Mordechai. So Mordechai says, Mi ike duchte deshma gagois tzrifin, or tzrifas gagois. Is there a place called roof tzrifim or tzrifim gagois? Bedake. They looked, and they found a field that had wheat, that had barley, so they can bring the omer. You see, so Mordechai figured out how to communicate with this Elaine, this mute person. Again, a similar story happened. When they came to bring the shtei halechem, and again, they didn't know how they're going to bring it because the people burned up all the wheat fields around Yerushalayim, and they need to bring shtei halechem. They have to make bread for the shtei halechem. So, and you would think you have Mordechai the tzaddik there, everybody would show respect, but that's not the way it is. Say they made an announcement. Also, Gugav Chersha, this Chersha came, this mute person came. Oisiv Yoda Aini put his hand on his eye. Yoda Asichra, and one hand he placed by the bolt hole in the door. So one hand on his eye, one hand by the bolt door hole in the door. Amalu Mordechai, so Mordechai said, he's hinting to us where we could find wheat. Is it a place called Ein Soicher or Soicher Ayin? But Daku, they searched it, when they found wheat there. So therefore, that's what we're talking about over here in the Mishnah. They found Maisa, they couldn't find next to Yerushalayim barley or wheat. Shabaha Aimer, Migaga Srifim, and Shtei Alechem came from Bikas Ein Soicher. That's the story of the Mishnah. Then the Gemara continues with this interesting thing about Mordechai. There were 3 women, the Isis Shalish Kinim, that brought 3 sets of birds. And now, when a woman finishes her ziva, so she brings 1 katas and 1 oila. Chada amar lezivasi, v'chada amar liyamasi, v'chada amar la'inasi. Each one said that I'm bringing it. One said it's for my flow. One said is for I saw water like a river. And one said I'm bringing these birds for my period. So they all savamine zivasi zava mamish leyamasi yama mamish leynasi mamish. The Kahanim in the Beis English understood from these women that they had a ziva. And after a certain period of time, they're required to bring a carbon, and each one brought a pair of birds, one for a chatas, one for an oila. The kula chada chatas chada oila. Each one was a chatas and an oila, and the women left. So that's what the Kahanim thought. Amalu Mordechai says, no, not true. Maybe they were both oilas. Shema bezoiv sikna. Maybe one got sick. She had a blood flow that caused her to be very, very sick, dangerously sick, and she's bringing these 2 oilers as a thank you, Hashem, for saving her life. Shema b'yam sikno, the one that said Yamase, I'm bringing for my sea adventure. Maybe she found herself in danger by the sea, and her life was saved. Shema be'ena siknitzu, maybe the one that said I'm bringing it for my oina. Maybe she was sick by her eye, and that's why she's bringing. So the birds, the kula oilus ninu, they were all oilus. So they couldn't believe that Mordechai was correct. Beduk, they called back the women. Ba'ashkach, we found that Mordechai was correct, that the women were not bringing these birds because of a menstrual flow. They were bringing it because they were as like a carbon taida, as a thank you Hashem for saving their life. So behind the Tanan, we go to Amud Aleph. Behind the Tanan, that's what we learned in the Mishnah. And the Mishnah, Psach in Shkolim, Psachia alakinim. There was a person called Psachia who was in charge of the birds. Zeh Mordechai. That was Mordechai the Tzaddik. Lama Nikra Shmoy Psachia. Why was he called Psachia? Mordechai had his name is Mordechai the Tzaddik from the Megillah Esther. Why do they call him Psachia? Shepseach Dvaram, he opens up things v'darshim. I guess he was good at puzzles. V'yadeya b'shivim lashon. He knows 70 languages. Says the Gemara, Kulas Sanhedrin nami yadei shivim lashon. Any person of the Sanhedrin knew 70 languages. So what's unique about Mordechai? Rabbi Yochanan said, how do you know to get a job in the Sanhedrin, you need to know 70 languages. So Rabbi Yochanan said, here are the qualifications to be on the Supreme Court. Ein mashivim b'Sanhedrin, we don't put on the Sanhedrin, ele bali chachma, somebody who knows sciences, bali mara, he's a very good look, he has a very nice look, like a reverend type of look, bal koima, somebody who's tall, bali zikna, he has to be a little old, because bali zikna, he has to be a little old with experience, but not too old. Bale kishafim, he has to somebody with kids. Bale kishafim, somebody who knows magic. And here's the point: v'yodim shivim lashon. in order to be part of the Sanhedrin, you had to be familiar with 70 languages. And why? Shaloite Sanhedrin Shemas Mapi Hamaturgimim. So that the Sanhedrin should not hear the litigants from an interpreter. They should be able to speak with anybody who comes to visit them. So we see that every person of Sanhedrin knew 70 language. So what are you telling me that Mordechai, who was on the Sanhedrin, knew 70 languages? Ella, Mordechai was different. To have a baya lishna v'darsh. He knew how to play charades and mix up languages and figure out what people are communicating. But Mordechai Bilshan, he understood the mixture of languages. So he was a lover of languages. I don't know. So that was unique about Mordechai. He just didn't know it, but he loved it and was able to figure out difficult communicators what they're trying to say. And this is interesting that we're learning this, that Mordechai from the Megillah Esther must have lived a couple of 100 years, because this story happens of the Chashmonaim, and during the time of the second bias is hundreds of years later after the story of Megillah Esther. Anyway, look at the Mishnah. Taisus, by the way, says that this Mordechai is not the same Mordechai. Maybe they name people who are very bright Mordechai, but Rashi says it's Mordechai of the Megillah. Now, let's see the Pasuk. The Pasuk on the screen says that Usvartem Lechem, where do you bring the Omer? So we know we bring it on the first day of Chalamoid, the day after the first day of Pesach. And that's when you start counting the Omer, and you count 49 days, and the 50th day is Shavuos. Now, the pasuk doesn't say count the day after Yom Tov. The pasuk says Usfarten Chemi Mochras HaShabbos, the day after Shabbos. If you literally speaking, the day after Shabbos was Sunday. So if Pesach was on a Monday, you would have to wait till the following Sunday to start bringing the Omer. To bring the Omer and then count the 49 days. But Chazal, and that was the interpretation of the Baisusim, the early pre-Christians, that interpreted the Torah literally, without any Masorah. So therefore, they always tried to make that Shavuos always came out on a Sunday. Count 7 weeks. Tispru chamishim yom. V'kraftem mincha chadash l'Hashem. So because of that, therefore, they made a big procession when they brought and harvested the Omer. So Keitzerei Oisin, how did they bring the Omer? Be back into the Mishnah. Shluchei Bezin Yotzim Erev Yom Tov, from Erev Pesach, the messengers prepared it. They went out, Oisin Krichas b'Mechubel Karka. They bounded, let's say, 3 of the 5 so'in of barley that they're going to harvest on Yom Tov, on the day after, first day of Chalamoid. So they just bounded it up, so it's easy to cut it with a sickle. So it should be easy to cut. And they made a big procession to watch the harvesting of the Omer. Everybody who could come came there to watch the harvesting. It should be cut with a big procession. As soon as it became night after the first night of Pesach, where we're having our second night of Seder, obviously, but it was the first night after Pesach. The person in charge says, "Did the sun set?" I'm a hen. They say yes. Ba Shemish, did the sun set? I'm a hen. Yes. Malgozu, I'm a hen. I'm using this sickle. They say yes. Malgozu, is this a sickle? I'm a hen. Kupazu, is this box where I'm going to put the harvested barley? I'm a hen. Kupazu, I'm a hen. B'Shabbos, if it was Shabbos, I'm a hen. Shabbazu, it's Shabbos. I'm a hen, it's Shabbos. Shabbazu, I'm a hen. Is it Shabbos? Yes. So let's say the first day of Pesach was on a Friday, then the first day Chalamoid was on Shabbos. They would harvest and cut the Omer on Shabbos. Ektzar, should I cut? Ektzar, should I cut? And even though the Mishnah says you did these things twice, shalosh pamim, every step of the way they repeated it 3 times. A kol dava v'dava. The hein Omer like hen, yes, hein. Kol kachlama. Why did they make a big procession? As I explained, the bisons, so how you Omer. They would say that depends. Most of the time, the Ktsiras HaYomer is not on Matzah Yom Tov. It was not on Matzah Yantiv. It was on a Sunday. It was the day after Shabbos. So after Shabbos Chalamoid, that's when they cut that. So we want to uproot that thought. So therefore, we made a big procession to show we're going to cut the Omer right after the first day of Pesach. And Mimochras Shabbos means not Shabbos, but Mimochras Shabbos, the first day after Yantiv. That's when you bring the Omer. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanim. This is a brisa that discusses the history of the Jewish people, right? And Elin Yomaya Dolohisnaibam. There were following days that they made a deal that when you're not allowed to fast during those days, will be in the Lisbon behind. And some yomtivs, some special holidays were so severe, was so strict that they don't make a hesped if somebody dies. So Mereish Yarcha Denisim Atmamnibei. From the first day of Nisan till the 8th day of Nisan, Itoikim Timuda, that they settled the Tamid question with the Baisanim. And therefore, the Loi Misped, it was a big Yantiv, all those 8 days, so no Hesped. Somebody dies from the first day of Nisan until the 8th day of Nisan, no Hesped. And from the 8th day of Nisan till the end of Yantiv, it's a Yantiv that they settled with the Baisanim that about Shavuos, that they settled the debate. And therefore, the Loi Lispite, we don't make a hesped, but the Loi Istai, you don't fast. This is a mistake in the Gemara. You don't fast, but you do make a hesped, because it wasn't such a big yontiv, because it was easy to convince them. You see, the Gemara is going to explain. From the first day of Nisan until the 8th day of Nisan, they settled the debate regarding the carbon tamid, and therefore, when they settled the debate, everybody agreed these are 8 days of holidays that you don't make a hesped. The Tzedukim had used to say, and they had a fine point. Yochid misnadev umevi tamid. An individual could bring his own carbon tamid. My Dorish, what drasha did they have? Because the pasuk says, if you read the Chumash, it says as keves echa tase baboyim, as a keves sheni tase ben aboyim. It says you can make one sheep in the morning and one sheep in the afternoon. So tase means an individual could make it, and that's what the Tzedukim felt, that the Rabbanim are wrong. Anybody who wants to donate a carbon tamid could. My hadure, and what did the Rabbanim answer back? It says it's karbani lachmi liishai tishmeru. Tishmeru means that everybody has to chip in. Everybody's responsible for the carbon tamid, and it's not that it can be donated by an individual. So that's what. And therefore, it was such a big yontiv that the Tzedukim gave up, and they said, okay, the rabbis are right. And therefore, even though they had a real pasuk that agreed with them, what they settled it that they had an 8-day yontiv, and if somebody dies during those 8 days, not only you couldn't fast, but you also didn't make a hesped. Then mitmani beiv at soif beyada, from the 8th day of Nisan till the end of the yontiv. So then they settled another debate with the Tzedukim, with the Baisanim. Itoisev Chagadish Vay, they settled the debate of our Mishnah. And once the Tzedukim Baisanim agreed with us that we're correct, so the Loi is standard. You don't have a fast, but you do make a hesped, because it was more easier to convince them. Why? The Baisunim used to say, Atzeres achar Shabbos. Shavuos always comes out on a Sunday. Nitpol lehem Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai v'Amar lehem. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai joined the groups and started to debate them, even though it was ridiculous to debate them. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai wanted to debate them to show how mistaken they are. Shaitim minayin lechem. How do you know that it's Adam echad? Nobody could say it, even though it seems from the pasuk. But when you learn, if you learn Chumash and you take the context, you know that Mimachros Shabbos means Yontiv. Nobody wanted to debate Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. There was one old man who wanted to debate him. He said, I have a good reason why Shavuos is always on a Sunday. Moshe Rabbeinu oiv Yisrael chaya. Moshe Rabbeinu loved the Jewish people. And basically he's trying to say that Moshe Rabbeinu made up the Torah. And he knew Shavuos is a one-day holiday. Amar v'tikna acha Shabbos. So he made that the holiday always comes out on a Sunday. Why? So Jews could have a 2-day holiday, Shabbos, and followed by Shavuos. And we're complaining about a 3-day holiday, but they should have a 2-day holiday. So that was his idea, that Moshe Rabbeinu definitely wanted Shavuos to always be on a Sunday. Karal of Mikrazeh. So Rabbi Yochanan said, if Moshe Rabbeinu loved us, it says that there's an 11-day trip from the Har Sinai to get to Eretz Yisrael. If it's only an 11-day trip, we go to Amar Beis. The Moshe Rabbeinu Yisrael Haya. If Moshe Rabbeinu loved the Jewish people, then why did Moshe Rabbeinu delay us for 40 years in the Midbar? So it must be Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't love the Jewish people. So he played the game with him. So this old man said to Rabbi Mazake, is that how you want to finish your debate? Our Torah is not complete, just like your nonsense talk is not complete. You have no proof, and you're trying to say our Torah is not complete the same way your nonsense talk is not complete, which is not true. Our Torah is complete and perfect. The pasuk says Tisperu Chamishim Yoim. This pasuk says that we should count 50 days. And this is Rabbi Yochanan ben Broicha's proof. If you look at the Chumash, it says Tisperu Chamishim Yoim, right over here, count 50 days. So the Torah is not dependent on when Shavuos could come out. And the pasuk over here, the beginning of the pasuk says you should count it on a Sunday. You start the count on a Sunday. So So the Torah is talking about both situations. If Yontif fell out on Shabbos, you're right. Shavuos is on a Sunday. And according to Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, that's the pasuk. The day after Shabbos, if Yontif of Pesach fell out on Shabbos, then the next day you bring the Omer. When the pasuk says Tisperu Chamim Shiyom, the Torah is telling you don't wait till Sunday to bring the Omer. Kan be Yontif Shecholias Bemsa Shabbos. If Yontif came out in the weekday, so then if let's say the first day of Pesach came out on a Tuesday, so the Wednesday you bring the Omer. And that's Tisperu Chamim Shiyom. You always count 50 days, and Shavuos will be on a Tuesday. So that's Rabbi Yochanan's proof. Rabbi Lezer Omer, 2 more proofs, and then we'll stop. Rabbi Lezer Omer and Tzarech. We don't need Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's proof. Harehu Omer. The pasuk says Tispar Loch. The pasuk in discussing Shavuos and the counting, it says you should count. Svira Tli Bebezin. It's a counting that's dependent on the courts. Shehem Yoidin Mechadish. So Mimachras Shabbos, Machas Yontiv. Yotze Shabbos Bereshis Svirasa B'chol Odam. If the Torah is telling you that from when you count, then the Shabbos must be referring to Yom Tov, because Yom Tov is decided by the courts when they want to be Mekadesh the Chodesh, when Yom Tov to fall out. And so the Torah is saying that this Shabbos refers to Yom Tov, which was decided by the Bezdin. And if it's not referring to the Shabbos Bereshis, which is always on a Saturday, so therefore he's proving that the pasuk itself indicates that Mimachras HaShabbos means the day after Yom Tov, not the day after Shabbos. Rabbi Shua says, I have another proof. The Torah says, the Torah tells you, count 29 and a half days and make Kiddush HaChodesh. And then the Torah tells you another similar idea, count 7 weeks, and then the 50th day, make Shavuos. Just like the Chodesh. Right when it arrives, you can recognize when it arrived, right? You could recognize when it arrives because right after the 29 and a half days, it's Rosh Chodesh, right? Afatzeres samach libiyase nikeres. You could always count a certain amount of days, and bingo, that's going to be. It's very predictable when Shavuos will be. Vim time atzeres loylam achar Shabbos. But if you're going to tell me Shavuos is always after a Sunday, so then how is it always predictable? Because if If Pesach is on a Shabbos, yes, then Shavuos will be 50 days later. But if Pesach is on a Monday and you're telling me delay counting till after Shabbos, so Shavuos is not as predictable from a starting point, because the starting point is a moving starting point. It depends when Pesach is. If Pesach is on a Shabbos, yes, then you start counting. If Pesach is on a Monday, then you have to wait a long time till the next Sunday to begin counting. And so therefore, just like counting Rosh Chodesh is always predictable, so counting Shavuos should also be very predictable. And Rabbi Shmuel says, and this will end. Rabbi Shmuel says, I know why I know for certain that the Torah was, when it says B'mochras HaShabbos, was referring to Pesach. The counting starts from Pesach, not from Shabbos. The Torah tells you, Hevei Omer b'Pesach, Shtei Alechem Atzeres. The Torah tells you, bring the korban Omer on Pesach and Shtei Alechem on Shavuos. Ma lahalam regel tchilas regel, just like on the Shtei Alechem was brought on Yontif and the first day of Yontif. Afkan, so also the Omer was brought on regel on Pesach, utchilas regel, not on the beginning of Yontif. In other words, it has to be done the first day of Chol Hamoed. Not that it's sometimes you bring it on the third day of Chol Hamoed or the fourth day of Chol Hamoed. No, it has to be always similar to the Shtei Alechem, which is right away in the beginning of the Yontif. And comes along Yehuda ben Beseira, and Yehuda ben Beseira, Nemba Shabbos L'malav and Nemba Shabbos L'mata. It says that Usfart ad mimochras HaShabbos HaShvius Tisper Chamim Shviyim. So he says that this Shabbos definitely refers to the end, and the word Shabbos definitely refers to Shavuos. So he says it like this: Neber Shabbos L'malav and Neber Shabbos L'mata. Malal, and just like the word Shabbos at the end of the pasuk, Regel or Tchilas Regel refers to the Yontiv and the beginning of Yontif, because it says Vikrafte Mincha Chadasha Lashem. On this Shabbos, you bring the Mincha Chadasha. So it must be, it's trying to tell you that you're bringing the Shtei Alechem on Shavuos. So also in the beginning of the pasuk, Afkan, in the beginning of the pasuk, Regel Utchilas Regel Samachla is talking about the beginning of the Yontiv as close as possible to the beginning of the Yontiv, which is the first day of Chol Hamoed. So you juxtapose the two Shabbos in the pasuk to solve that the Omer was brought not on a Sunday, but the day after the first day of Pesach. And in this context, the Chumash is calling the first day of Pesach a Shabbos. Okay, stop right here.
Thank you so much.